We are now in a section of the lectionary where Jesus is saying some pretty harsh things, and we haven't yet hit a time in our year when he's saying things that are a little less harsh. It just seems like the hits keep on coming. And today, Jesus outlines for us the importance of being kind and being loving and being aware of how our words and actions affect those with whom we are in relationship. And I think that's an important reminder for all of us who say we are followers of Jesus. Because when we are followers of Jesus, we have certain guidelines that we try to aspire to achieve. And some of those include the two great commandments, to love God and to love neighbor. Right? So this is a reminder of one of the ways that we can do that, and one of the pitfalls that we can end up moving into if we're not being mindful of how our behavior and our words and our actions affect the people around us. And we even have an example, Jesus messing up. There aren't too many examples in Scripture where Jesus gets it wrong. But this one stands out because this woman asks Jesus for help. And Jesus basically calls her a dog, which in those days, in that part of the country, it's still not nice, but in those days in that part of the world, that was a pretty big insult. But she handled it with grace. And she said, "You may be right, but even the dogs get the crumbs." And she called Jesus on his bad behavior. And he stepped back and did some self-reflection and said, "You know what? You're right. I was wrong. You are worthy of my help." And he helped her. Right? So we have this image of Jesus missing the mark and then being self-reflective and correcting his ways going forward. Okay. And the thread here is something about how people can tend to influence others, right? Our behaviors and our words and our actions can have tremendous influence on others, right? And that includes the overarching theme that we use when we speak or when we behave, right? We have tremendous influence on others. And we can promote positivity, and we can make something that's not even that great sound amazing, and we can make things that sound not that bad, we can make them sound horrible. Right? And if you want an example of how that works in our human minds, all you have to do is look at the internet or television or radio or billboards, advertising. Right? Advertising can convince us that certain products that are nearly identical are better or worse than others. Right? An example that immediately comes to mind, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Coca-Cola and Pepsi are two of the same flavor of beverage. They are colas. They are cola sodas. They taste pretty similar. There are some subtle differences. Most of us probably know that Coke and Pepsi don't taste identical, but they taste pretty similar. And marketing and advertising has convinced many people in our country and even the world to take a side and to say, "I love Coke and I hate Pepsi," or the other way around. That's amazing, because those two drinks, you may have a preference for one or the other. I'm not saying you don't, but to say, "I love one and I hate the other," and they taste nearly identical, that's some impressive psychological handiwork, isn't it? And that's all because of marketing, right? The Coca-Cola people know how to market their beverage in a way that people across the world, in some parts of the world, drink more Coca-Cola than they drink water, like in Mexico. Mexico consumes more Coca-Cola, not per capita, but total, than the United States because of marketing. Right? So influence. We have influence on how we like things or how we may not like things. And it's important that as people of faith, we use that influence in a positive way. In a positive way. Okay? You may be familiar with a basketball coach from UCLA who won tons and tons of games and lots of national championships and had consecutive undefeated seasons, back-to-back years, which is unheard of in college basketball. John Wooden. And when John Wooden coached at UCLA, he had a quote. It said, "Winning breeds winning." Winning breeds winning. Now, what does he mean by that? Well, if you get your basketball team, for instance, together and you win a game, it builds confidence. It builds confidence, and it builds that culture of knowing what it feels like to win and a desire to continue to win more. And so now that the team has won and they know that they can win together and they know that they like winning and they know they want to do it again, then there's more drive to try to do it again, right? It creates a winning culture that breeds itself, right? Now, the opposite side of that is that the inverse is also true, right? Losing can breed losing. And if we get sucked in a negative vortex, right, we can find ourselves being negative as well. And so it's important that we focus on the culture of winning and on a culture of positivity. Right? We see that in college football, for instance. We've got college football season coming up soon. And some of the early games in the college football season feature big-time universities playing against tiny little schools that have hardly any budget and hardly a decent football program. Why do they do that? So that they can win a game together and know what it feels like to win going forward. That's why those big schools schedule those small schools, is so they can breed a culture of winning. And when you win, you want to win more. And when you are spreading positivity, you want things to be more positive. Okay? So here is the interactive part of today's homily. I want us to take a few moments to reflect on what it is that brings us here to St. John's, because every one of us in this room is here for a reason. There is something good that brought us here, and that's true if we're longtime members. That is true if we come every once in a while. That is true if we happen to be visiting. There is something that called us to be here. Maybe if we're visiting, maybe we're traveling, and this was the closest Episcopal church to where we're staying. That's totally fine. That's a valid reason, right? Whatever the reason is, I assure you there's a good reason for it, because otherwise we wouldn't be here, right? There has to be a reason we are here. So I want us to think, each of us, to spend a moment reflecting, and I want you to think of three things that bring you joy and fulfillment here at St. John's. 3 things. Take a moment and reflect. Now here is the challenging part. I want you to share those, and I want you to share them with somebody here in this room. Now I want you to find somebody that maybe you don't talk to terribly often, maybe somebody you don't know very well. I want you to find someone, and if you happen to have difficulty with mobility, then flag someone down and someone will come to you, right? So be mindful of people's mobility, but I'm going to ask you to get up and find somebody and go share your 3 things with that person. Now ideally, we're going to have 6 things total, right? Maybe you find somebody and some of them are the same as yours, and that's okay. But let's go and find somebody in this room and share your 3 and invite them to share their 3 with you. Ready, go. All right, I'm seeing people settling back down. So let's wrap up our conversations if we haven't already done so. It looks like a lot of people have shared their 3 and have received 3 from someone else. Okay. So now here is a test of courage. You need to find out if there are volunteers who are willing to share some of the things that you've heard from someone else or some of the things that you've thought of on your own. What are some of the things that are positive things that bring you joy here at St. John's? Do we have anybody who wants to volunteer? You. What brings you joy? Gymnastics? Do we do gymnastics here? Here at church? Wow, I didn't know that. That's okay. All right. Great example. Other examples. Bob.
Okay, the thing that really enjoy is the preaching, taking of the Eucharist.
The preaching, which puts me on the spot a little bit. The receiving of Holy Communion, which is good, and then the snacks on the way out. Those are all wonderful reasons to be at church, and those are all things that nourish and nurture us to go out into the world and to do good work. So thank you for that example. Yes.
Follow that up because I love doing the tables for everybody.
So,
That's where my minutes go.
so you love doing that? Okay. Being part of the choir and the community. So again, other examples of why it's important to be together as a community and to be positive, because all those things are very important and they're related. I don't know if you noticed, but they're related. When we do things together and we eat together, we are in relationship together. So that's a big part about being the church. And the word that we use for church comes from a Greek word, ecclesia, which means the community gathered. So those are perfect examples of why churches exist in the first place. And so I'm glad that you feel that positivity in those areas here. Do we have others? Yes, Michelle. Break in a little bit. Choir practice. So if singing brings you joy, choir practice begins on Thursday the 20th. So you can share your joy with others in the form of music. Yes, Susie. The gymnastics? Wonderful examples, thank you. More community-minded and positivity, joy. Yes, what else? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, those are. Well, I'm glad that is the case for you because that's part of the bigger thing that we're talking about is an overall feeling, right? And if there is a feeling of joy and a perpetuation of joy, then we can receive that as well. And so I'm glad to hear that is something that speaks to you. All right. Is there one more? Let's have one more. One more. Don, please. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. That's great to hear. Sanctuary, where we are standing, the word sanctuary means peace, and so I'm glad that you find this to be a place of sanctuary. I did see one more hand. Would you like to share?
So my 3 were tradition. I grew up with this family.
Okay.
And I took a little journey someplace else. I moved back.
Mm-hmm.
That was important to me. Peace. Every time I come here, I just have this incredible sense of peace. And
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for those of you who are holding on to those pieces of positivity in your heart. And what I will ask you is keep them in your heart for now, but when you leave today, when the service is over, continue to share those pieces of joy and of goodness and of light and of love with others. Okay? Because there's two things that happen when we do that. One, and I felt it and I noticed it in your faces when people were speaking. I noticed it in your faces. One is community building, because when people said those positive things, I saw a lot of heads nodding, I saw a lot of smiles, I saw a lot of people agreeing with some of those things, and maybe thinking about things that they hadn't noticed, right? So there's that positivity, that influence goes out. So there's community building within the community, but secondarily, and also probably equally important, is evangelism. Because when we go out into the world, when we leave this place and we have interactions with others, we have an opportunity to say, this is where I go to church, and these are the reasons I go there, and this is the feeling of joy and positivity that I experience by being there, right? And they may just want to decide to come and check it out. Now, they may decide, well, I'd like to go to a different church. That church sounds nice and it's not maybe for me, and that's totally okay, right? Evangelism doesn't have to be for this particular parish, right? Evangelism is to bring people closer to God, and we want people to be closer to God in whatever way is most meaningful to them. Now, we hope it's here, right? We want it to be here. But if not, the most important thing is that somebody can develop that relationship with God. And it helps us to follow that example of John Wooden and to say winning breeds winning. Because we can look around and we can find plenty of things that we need to work on. That's no secret to anybody. There are plenty of things that if we focus our attention on improving, we will improve them, right? That's part of our Christian lives as well, right? But in the meantime, things are really good. Things are really good. And if we work on acknowledging that positivity and recognizing it, and then speaking it and encouraging others to do the same, right? We build a stronger, more faithful, more loving community, and a community that inspires other people to want to come in and to be a part of it. So when we leave here, I want us to remember that interesting story from the gospel and that example of Jesus getting it wrong and being called out on it, and then recognizing it and doing better, right? Winning breeds winning. And so let's go out into the world and breed winning together. Amen.